Bichir decided at that moment that he will let Hugo Baskerville feel the same sensation. In the Baskerville territory, Underdog, in a large villa, a bald man gave orders to 2 workers, instructing them to ensure that the place is perfectly clean by the next day, as a new deputy consul from the Baskerville family was coming. The workers acknowledged his orders and said yes sir. Later on, one of the workers wondered what kind of person the new deputy consul would be and hoped that he would have experience in business. However, the other worker told him that the new deputy consul was only 15 years old. While they were talking, a young boy was approaching the villa, and the second worker noticed him. He placed his hand on the kid's shoulder and wondered whose child he was and if any employee had brought him. The worker then told the boy that he couldn't just enter the villa freely. It turned out, the young boy who had approached the villa was none other than Bichir. With an angry look on his face, he ordered the worker to remove his hand from his shoulder. Then, he pulled out a paper and showed it to the worker, who was surprised to see that it was the document verifying Bichir's position as the new deputy consul. The workers were confused as to why he had come a day early, but Bichir was not concerned about that. He ordered the workers to prepare food and drinks for a party he was going to have. As Bichir entered the villa, both workers had questioning looks on their faces and wondered why the new deputy consul was planning a party. Soon, the party began, and the whole villa was filled with food and drinks. Many nobles were in attendance, enjoying the festivities and talking with one another. Chihuahua Baskerville, the general secretary of the city of Underdog, was pacing back and forth in his office, clearly agitated. He looked out the window and couldn't believe what he saw. The new deputy consul, a young man who had just started working for the city, was holding a party at the workplace. Chihuahua was already having a hard time because all of his predecessors had been dismissed for accepting bribes. And now, this guy was drinking and partying on the job. Chihuahua couldn't believe the audacity of this troublemaker. As he was about to express his frustration, Bichir suddenly appeared behind him and asked if he was the general secretary. The sudden interruption startled him and he almost jumped out of his skin. He was surprised to see Bichir and wondered how long he had been standing there. Bichir introduced himself as Bichir van Baskerville, the new deputy consul, and Chihuahua introduced himself as Chihuahua Baskerville. Bichir repeated Chihuahua's name, noting that he didn't have a middle name. Chihuahua thought to himself that it was going to happen again. He knew that a lack of a middle name signified that he was from outside the family and that he was employed rather than a blood member of the family. Chihuahua had to deal with discrimination from deputy consuls because of this. He was tired of being looked down upon and treated unfairly because he wasn't born into the family. But Chihuahua was surprised by Bichir's response. Instead of mocking him, Bichir placed his hand on Chihuahua's shoulder and simply said, "Nice." This threw Chihuahua off guard, and he responded with a confused look. Bichir went on to explain that he had scanned through Chihuahua's personal information on the way there, and had noticed that he was from Underdog. Chihuahua agreed with him, saying that he was born and raised in the current place they were in. Bichir acknowledged this and mentioned that he knew how hard people like him had to work and that he didn't intend to interfere with how he did his job. Chihuahua was still a bit confused but responded with an awkward okay. Chihuahua couldn't help but think that was this some new form of harassment, and wondered why Bichir was even there in the first place when he was the one who asked for the party. But Bichir continued, mentioning that while the personal law system itself didn't have a problem, there were many strange things about the judicial system. Bichir continued speaking, explaining that the problem with Underdog was that many illegal business owners were successful, and as a result, the underground held the power above the law. Simply stopping the illegal businesses wouldn't resolve the problem. The heads of the underground businesses needed to be removed. As a deputy consul, his job was to make laws and execute them, and while he respected all the laws that were already in place, he intended to add a new one. Chihuahua exclaimed in surprise as he heard the word new law. Bichir nodded and explained that he would make sure the underground economy was in shambles within a week. However, he needed a cause in order to make and execute this law. Chihuahua couldn't understand why Bichir needed a cause for getting rid of illegal businesses. Bichir explained that he was still young and a newly appointed deputy consul. He needed a performance in order to make it more convincing. Chihuahua still didn't fully understand Bichir's plan. Bichir looked out of window as his expression turned into an evil grin, and he said that to put it differently, I will lay out poop for the flies. Chihuahua couldn't help but wonder what Bichir was planning. The next day, Bichir arrived at Doorsmile Street in downtown Underdog. A huge crowd had already gathered there and people were chatting among themselves. Bichir stood on the stage with a stake in his hand. Chihuahua and his companions wondered what the deputy consul was planning to do. They commented that there were a lot of people there, and that the deputy consul had been standing there since the crack of dawn. Suddenly, Bichir stepped forward and announced that he was the newly appointed deputy consul. The crowd was surprised to see such a young man as the deputy consul, and wondered what he was going to do. Some of them murmured that he was cute while some questioned what a young man like him could do.